Hi YouTube, welcome to another edition of Horror Hands, and for this video I'm going to go through all of my horror movie anthologies. So this video was requested by a viewer of mine, Matt in Spiel. Hi Matt, thank you for requesting this video and for supporting the channel. So he wanted to see what anthology movies I had, so I thought that's a good idea for a video. I do enjoy an anthology film, so I'll go through this, and hopefully Matt and everyone else that watches this, you can let me know which of these movies you really enjoy, and hopefully you can get some recommendations for some decent horror anthology movies. So we've got all of these to go through, so this might be a two-part video, I'm not sure, we'll see how we go. And I must confess, as usual, a lot of these movies, I don't remember them too well. I don't remember sort of specific segments, but I do remember if I enjoyed the movie or not, so I can at least tell you if I like the movie. So, anyway, the first movie I have is 1031. This is one I did really enjoy. So as the title suggests, this is like a Halloween themed horror movie. Really good for watching around the Halloween season. It's got that feel and that vibe. It has the segment that I really liked was the two guys in like the haunted guest house. The first segment in the movie, that was really good. But all of the segments in this are entertaining. There's not a bad one in this one. So 1031 is definitely an anthology that I would recommend. There is a second one now, but I need to pick that one up. Okay, the next one, one of the craziest anthologies I've seen, and that is the ABCs of Death. So these are 26 short segments representing each letter of the alphabet, going from A to Z. And the theme of the video is sort of linked to the letter. So I can't remember, A is like autopsy and B is blood and things like that. So there's a short video that kind of captures the word that it's based on. It's not bad. It's a very mixed bag, from absolutely bonkers to pretty decent. The segment that stands out for me, I think it's D for dogfight, where it involves this underground dogfight. It looks like it's going to be really bad taste and upsetting, but it's actually got a really good twist in it, so that was good. So yeah, very mixed bag, but a very interesting movie, very crazy. Okay, next up is After Midnight. I've just recently watched this. Got this for Christmas. This was a pretty decent 80s anthology. These students are studying fear as part of like a college course, and their teacher is very out there. He believes that you have to genuinely experience fear to learn about it. So he tells like 3 creepy stories, all which are pretty good. It's a little bit cheesy, but one that I enjoyed. If you're into sort of 80s movies, I think you'd definitely enjoy this one. Okay, the next movie is All Hallows Eve. This is excellent. So this is a babysitter. She finds this old VHS tape and puts it on, and it's 3, I think, stories involving Art the Clown terrorising people and just doing what he does best. It's a really good film. Art the Clown is excellent and is like a modern horror icon in my opinion, and I wish he did some more movies. So yeah, definitely recommend All Hallows Eve. Okay, next up is a Christmas anthology that I mentioned in my recent Christmas special, and that is All the Creatures Were Stirring. This is another good anthology. It's very much like an indie film, quite low budget, but pretty creative segments. This one, the most notable one for me is the Office one, where they do like a Secret Santa, but the presents are rigged to randomly kill people. So that's a pretty intense one and pretty gory. So at Christmas time, I could definitely recommend All the Creatures Are Stirring. Okay, next up, one of my favourite anthologies, and that is Asylum. So in general, I would say any British anthology from the 70s is highly recommended. They're all fantastic. Asylum is one of the very best, one of my favourite anthologies. Robert Powell plays a doctor who goes for a job interview at this asylum, and in order to kind of prove his credentials, they ask him to see if he can identify which of the inmates used to be the doctor that worked there. So he interviews like about 5 inmates, and they tell their tale of the terrifying events that led to them being committed in the asylum. It's absolutely fantastic. It's classy, it's creepy, it's a wonderful film. One of the best examples of British horror filmmaking, I would say. And like I say, one of the go-to anthologies for me, as are pretty much most of the 70s British movies. Okay, next up is The Basement. I don't remember any of the segments in this, but I do remember that I enjoyed the film because this is a shot on video film, so very, very, very low budget. And usually I don't really like shot on video movies. They're usually a bit too low quality for me to enjoy them. But I do remember enjoying The Basement, so that's all I've got on it right now, I'm afraid. But yeah, I did enjoy it for what it was. Okay, next up, another really good one, and that is Body Bags. Really great early 90s horror film. This has got a great cast in it. I think it's 3 stories in this one, and worth watching alone just for John Carpenter's part. He plays like the host of the anthology, and he's like a corpse in a morgue, if I remember right. And yeah, there's some really good stuff in this one. I like the Mark Hamill one. He gets, oh, what does he get now? I think his hands get changed or something. He gets some kind of transplant, and the body part he gets comes from a murderer. Is it his eyes? Something like that. But he starts to get this, like, the murderer starts to take over him and his body. It's really good stuff. Also the one with Stacey Keach and the hair product, which keeps growing and growing. Yeah, really cool film, Body Bags. I definitely recommend that one. And like I say, worth watching as well for the sheer number of recognisable people that are in that one. Okay, Cat's Eye. This is another really good one. These are, I think it's 3 or 4 stories based on Stephen King stories. All of them in this one are really good. You've got Quitters Inc. with James Woods trying to quit smoking, and the company that are helping him are very unorthodox, shall we say. The Ledge, where the guy has to walk all around the edge of the building, that one was really good. And the Drew Barrymore one with the creature that keeps like taking all of her breath, if I remember right. She's trying to sleep and there's a creature in her room. So yeah, I think there's 3 segments in this one, but a very good film, very good 80s horror movie in general, and definitely a highly recommended anthology. Okay, next up is Chillarama. So this one, I don't remember this one too much, but I remember it being quite like lowbrow comedy, very kind of Troma-esque. I didn't care for it too much from what I remember, but I've only seen it the once, and it was a long time ago. I remember this one appealing quite a lot when I saw it, but then when I watched it, I think I was a little bit underwhelmed. So, yeah. Okay, next up is Creepshow, and I've talked about this quite a bit on my channel. However, this isn't a film that I like, and I would expect this is probably one of the most popular anthologies in this video. I just can't get into it. I think there's a couple of bits in it that are okay, but on the whole I don't find the segments very entertaining, and I wanted more from a collaboration between George Romero and Stephen King than what we got with Creepshow, because I think if they'd have gone serious and, you know, really put their heads together, they could have done something amazing. And yeah, Creepshow for me is just not one that I can get into, unfortunately. However, Creepshow 2 I enjoyed a lot more. So I really liked the first segment, with Old Chief Woodenhead, the Indian wooden statue that comes to life. And like a lot of people, I really like the second segment, The Raft, where a group of teenagers go out into the lake and they are attacked by this sort of gelatinous, weird tar-like creature in the water. It's really, really cool. And the book to that was really good as well. So, yeah, Creepshow I don't like. Creepshow 2 I like a lot more. Okay, next up is an anthology from the 1940s, I believe. Yeah, 1945, and this is called Dead of Night. And this is a really good film, classic anthology. This has the famous killer dummy in the movie. I forget what he's called now, but yeah, a ventriloquist dummy that develops a mind of his own. And it has a really good segment with a guy, he's playing golf, and I think he ends up cheating his partner, his golf partner, and he dies or something, but his golf partner comes back to haunt him on the golf course, and it's a really good segment. It had me laughing out loud, which is unusual for a 40s film, but it was really, really good. So if you like sort of old black and white classic movies, definitely check out Dead of Night. That one comes highly recommended. Okay, next up is Deadtime Stories. This is a peculiar one. It's a bit strange. It's kind of like a horror take on fantasy stories. It's a little bit hit and miss. It's not a bad effort, but it's not entirely good. But it's kind of unique in what it does, and it has some pretty decent effects in it, some pretty cool practical effects. So yeah, it's a strange one. It's an unusual one, this one is. Maybe give it a shot. Maybe you'll enjoy it. It's certainly different. Okay, next up, this is from Japan, perhaps, I think. This is Doomsday Book. This one is much more of like a futuristic sort of thriller horror kind of movie. So yeah, they all take place in the future. I think the first segment it's all kind of like dystopian, and there's like a zombie outbreak. And then the other one I remember is where like robots have sort of taken over society. Pretty cool movie, but like a lot, I don't remember it all that well. But yeah, this one was quite a high-tech futuristic anthology, which I've not seen many of. So it was pretty cool. I enjoyed it. Okay, next up is Dr. Terror's House of Horrors. So Peter Cushing plays Dr. Terror. He's like a tarot reader, and he reads the tarots of, I think it's 5 men on a train. He tells them all their fate, and it's all sort of it all leads to death, I believe, and it just tells out each person's fate. Really cool film. Got some good British actors in this one. I think the one I remember most is the vampire one. I think it's the last segment. That was pretty good. It had a good twist at the end. And yeah, always nice to see Peter Cushing and Christopher Lee doing their thing. So yeah, another great anthology. Right, next up, this might be Japanese as well. This is Experiments in Terror. This has to be one of the most bizarre films I have in my collection. It's crikey. It's like, this makes David Lynch look normal. It's a very, very confusing, kind of bewildering, almost like a student project. All sort of black and white, out of focus, very flashy, completely impossible to understand for me. I have to confess I didn't make it all the way through because I was just so lost in what was going on, and it wasn't really an enjoyable film. Visually, it's very, very, very difficult to watch. Very flashing lights, black and white, grayscale. Probably a lot of it is down to interpretation, but it was so bizarre, I just didn't enjoy it. So not one that I'd personally recommend. Okay, next up, another one of my favourite ones, and that is From Beyond the Grave. This is signed by David Warner as well, who was awesome. This is a brilliant film. So this is another British 70s anthology. Peter Cushing owns an antique shop called Temptations Inc., I think it is. And people go into the shop, they buy antique pieces, and a lot of his customers are quite unscrupulous. They will like shortchange Peter Cushing, or they'll kind of manipulate him into selling things cheaper. But the items that they buy are like cursed or haunted, and so their story then plays out where the item that they bought becomes their downfall. So the one I remember most is the David Warner one, when he tricks Peter Cushing into selling him this mirror for really cheap. Peter Cushing does it, and then it turns out that the mirror's haunted, and David Warner is haunted by, I think it's like a pirate that comes out of the mirror. But it's really, really good. Peter Cushing's wonderful in it. It doesn't have a weak segment in it. Yeah, one of my favourite anthologies from Beyond the Grave. I highly recommend this one. Okay, next up is Ghost Stories. So this one definitely had its moments. It had some decent moments, and I kind of like the old-fashionedness that kind of seeped through a bit when I was watching this one. But the ending lets it down. It has like a wraparound story at the end, and it's awful. It's really terrible. So that sort of lets the movie down. On the whole, it's okay. I think it had a bit more potential, but not a bad effort. Right, next up is the Horror Network. This is one that I don't remember all that well, but I do remember quite enjoying it. It was quite different, this one was. Yeah, I only remember little snippets of this. I can't pinpoint each segment, but yeah, I remember this one being pretty good. Okay, what are we on? 16 minutes. Yeah, let's keep this party going and carry on. Okay, next up is House of the Dead. I think this is another British one. This guy comes in out of the rain, and he finds himself in like a mortician's sort of studio, whatever, and the mortician tells him the story behind the corpses that he's working on. I think this one was pretty good. Again, I don't remember this one that well, but I do remember thinking it was okay. Okay, next up, another contender for my favourite anthology ever, and that is The House That Dripped Blood. This one is absolutely fantastic. It all takes place within this one house that drips blood, and the occupants over the years all meet a sort of terrible fate, and it just tells the story of each one. So I really like the one with Denholm Elliott. He's writing like a crime novel, and the killer in his novel starts to stalk him in and around the house. There's the Christopher Lee one where his daughter has a voodoo doll of him. There's the amazing one with John Pertwee. He's making a horror film about vampires, and he's really he's really surly and miserable. The character in the film hates horror films, and he keeps having these like in-joke digs at horror films. It's so good, and then it turns out that the vampires in the film are real. So yeah, wonderful film, excellent segments, one of the very best British horror movie anthologies in my opinion. Okay, next up is The Monster Club. Worth watching for the cast. You got Vincent Price and John Carradine in this one, amongst a few others. Not the best anthology. I thought they could have done more with the stars that they had, but I did enjoy it reasonably enough. Like I say, it's always nice watching actors of this caliber come together and do these kind of movies anyway. So you've got that at least. Okay, next up, this is another one that I talked about in my Christmas special, because there is a Christmas segment in this one. This is Night Terrors. This is another kind of indie movie, very low budget, but it's one that I did enjoy. I didn't think it would be that good, but the segments in this were pretty decent. They've got some good amounts of gore in this one. So yeah, it's been a while, but I do remember enjoying that one. Okay, next up is Night Train to Terror. This is another really interesting one. I think it's like God and the Devil are on a train, and they sort of swap stories, and it's about three stories make up the movie, and I can't remember too much about what goes on, but I did enjoy this one, and it was quite a unique kind of stance with like that God and the devil conversation and those two swapping stories. I did quite like that, so don't remember it too much, but I know I can recommend this one. It's pretty good. Okay, next up is Nightmare Cinema. This might be the most modern anthology. This one came out a couple of years ago. It's not a bad effort. Not brilliant, but certainly not terrible. It's got some decent segments in it. The one with the surgery, the woman having the surgery is the one that stands out the most for me. But yeah, as far as modern horror movies and anthologies go, this one's not a bad effort. Okay, next up is Nightmares, another one from the 80s. If you are a fan of 80s horror films, I can definitely recommend this one. It is very 80s, but I enjoyed it. My favourite segment in this one is Emilio Estevez fighting the video game. He gets immersed in a video game and kind of has to fight the computer villain inside it. Pretty cool stuff, very 80s. I like that one. This is, I think, the most modern one, actually, not Nightmare Cinema, and that is Scare Package. And this movie I absolutely loved. This is a really fun kind of nod to old horror movies, 80s horror movies, that kind of thing. It's about a guy working in a video store, and he kind of tells his new employee about the kind of the rules and the foundations of horror movies, and they are sort of then told on screen in these individual segments. It's a really good film, very fun film. Stick with it, because the first 10 minutes I hated it and I couldn't get into it, and I then saw where they were going with it, and it's a really, really good film. Highly recommend Scare Package. Okay, next up is Scary or Die. So this is 5 segments. They all take place around Los Angeles, I believe. I don't remember everything. There's a pretty decent zombie one, and my favourite one is, I think it's called Clown, and it's about a guy, he gets bitten by like a psychotic clown and starts to turn into a killer clown himself. It's really good stuff. I do remember being pleasantly surprised by this one. It's one that I really enjoyed. So that one's cool. Next up, again, 2 of the very best anthologies, Vault of Horror and Tales from the Crypt. Hard to pick a best one out of these 2. They're both excellent. Vault of Horror finds, I think it's 5 men. They get stuck in a lift and they like have to tell, I think they all had a bad dream the night before, and they all tell their dream, and that makes up the segments. Not a bad segment in it. It's absolutely fantastic. Same with Tales from the Crypt. A group of people, they find themselves face to face with the Crypt Keeper. He tells them of their demise, and that's told out in the segments. Again, not a bad one in Tales from the Crypt. It's got the famous one with Peter Cushing coming back from the grave looking like an amazing zombie. The Joan Collins Christmas one is in this one. Yeah, highly recommended. Both these 2 films are 2 of the very best British anthologies and anthologies in general. Okay, next one is Tales from the Darkside, the movie. Not bad, it's okay. This has got, I think it's 3 segments. I think my favourite one is the first one with Steve Buscemi and Christian Slater, and it involves like a mummy coming back from the dead. It's not too bad. I never watched these much when I was younger, or didn't see the film until recently, so I don't have like the nostalgia factor with this one, but it wasn't too bad, and there were some great practical effects in this one, so yeah, definitely check it out for those reasons. Okay, next up is Tales of Terror, an old 60s one with Vincent Price. I actually can't remember anything about this one, even if I enjoyed it or not, but certainly looks a good film. It's got a good cast to it, so yeah, maybe I should rewatch this one to just remind myself. But yeah, Tales of Terror. Okay, next up we have Tales That Witness Madness. This one, Donald Pleasance, he runs his own asylum, and the patients in there, similar to Asylum, they tell their story of why they're there, and each of their stories make up the segments. It's not too bad. I've seen better. It's not one that I would recommend before the other ones that I've talked about, but it's not too bad. Okay, next up is Theatre Bazaar. This is a really interesting one. This woman, she finds herself in like an auditorium, and there's like a mannequin doll on stage, and it tells her separate stories. But as the film goes on, the mannequin becomes more and more human, and it's actually Udo Kier that plays the mannequin. But this one's really good. It's a bit more out there, a bit more bizarre, as the title would suggest, but really well made and a very interesting film. So yeah, did enjoy this one. Okay, next up is another Vincent Price one, Twice Told Tales. This one's a pretty decent one. My favourite segment is the first one, where Vincent Price and his colleague, they find like a liquid that makes you younger again, and they use it to make themselves younger and bring back his colleague's deceased wife. But of course it's a horror film, so things don't work out all that well. And yeah, the other two segments in it are pretty decent as well. Not bad if you want to watch one of these old 60s gothic movies. Pretty good for that. Okay, next up is Two Evil Eyes. So this is two separate movies. I don't know if you count that as an anthology, but one directed by George Romero, one directed by Dario Argento. I wasn't too keen on this actually. Again, similar to Creepshow, I expected more from those two directors. It's not bad, but they have both done much better films respectively than Two Evil Eyes. But it's been a while, so I haven't seen it for a long time. That's just what I thought of it when I watched it. Okay, next up is VHS. This is highly recommended. This is both one of my favourite anthology films and favourite found footage movies. This is a really, really creepy movie. Each segment is found footage based, and it's very scary, very violent, very sort of realistic as well. So yeah, I'm a huge fan of VHS. It's one of my go-to movies. I really like it. Same with VHS 2. This one might be even better. I don't know. Both of them are excellent films. So if you like anthology films and found footage films, definitely check those ones out. And then we have the third one, VHS Viral. This one I hear gets a lot more criticism, but I still enjoyed it. I thought it was a good film. I particularly like the skater boys fighting the skeleton creatures. That one was a really good segment. Okay, next up, almost there guys, is When Evil Calls. This is a really low budget British anthology. It has a lot of segments in it. They're all sort of like 3, 4, 5 minutes long, and I really enjoyed this one. This surprised me. I thought it would be really poor, really low budget, but because there's so many segments, it never really gets boring. It just keeps moving on from one thing to the other, and I did enjoy this. So yeah, I could definitely recommend When Evil Calls if you're okay with low budget stuff. Kind of like, it's almost like amateur sort of fan made, if you will. Okay, next up is The Willies, another 80s anthology. This one's geared a bit more towards like a PG audience. I remember enjoying it, but it's been years since I've watched this, 20 years probably since I saw The Willies, but one I would like to revisit because it is a fun kind of teenagery like horror movie. So it's a bit like a Goonish kind of feel to that one. And then the last one is The Witching Season. Again, not a bad effort for a modern anthology film. This one focuses on the Halloween season, so pretty good to watch around Halloween. The only thing with this is at the beginning of every segment they repeat the title card and opening credits, which gets a little bit repetitive, but the segments themselves are very entertaining, and like I say, pretty decent effort for a modern horror anthology. So I think that's all the anthologies I have. Thank you so much for watching all that, guys. Feel free to let me know what your favourite anthology is. If you've got any recommendations for other anthologies, definitely let me know. I'll check them out. Thank you very much for watching, and stay tuned for more videos.